My life had changed. After my own kids called me unreliable and poor, I chose justice over blood. At 60, I remarried on a beach and signed my secret stock fortune to my new wife's children, not a penny to my children. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. My name is Arthur Hale, and I am a grandfather who learned late in life that the word family can be carved into two different meanings. One is made of thanks and help and ordinary grace. The other is made of hands always reaching. My wife, June, has been gone 4 years. We were married young and badly for money, but with a kind of cheerful stubbornness that let us build something steady. We raised 2 children, Lydia and Jeremy. We slept with the window cracked open every season because she liked to fall asleep to wind and I liked to fall asleep to her. When the doctor used words like aggressive and no more than a year, I promised her I would keep going. I meant food, sleep, walks. I did not know I would be promising to keep holding up a family that would one day step on my hands just to see if I could still grip. I retired at 60 with a back that complained like an old dog and a small property management company ready to dissolve because I was the only one who knew it from the inside out. What my children knew was that I had stopped wearing a necktie and started wearing the same fisherman's jacket every morning. "Dad is unreliable," Lydia said once when she thought I had stepped out of the room. I had only stepped into the hallway to wash my hands before dinner. The word made the hallway feel narrower. "What is unreliable?" Jeremy asked, in that light tone he used when he wanted to mock something and not be held to the mockery. His wife, Monica, laughed. "Unreliable means he used to be money and now he is a question mark," Monica said, and I watched her pour my Pinot into a glass that already had wine in it. "I still do not understand why he cannot just sell the lake house. We keep saving him. He cannot even keep track of his phone." "I keep saving him," said Lydia's husband, Brad, very softly, trying on generosity like a new shirt. "Last week I spent 3 hours at the DMV because he lost a form. 3 hours. They did not see me in the hallway. I watched their faces float in the reflection of the dark window. Monica's was sharp and pretty. Brad's was confident and just starting to go slack around the mouth the way men's faces do when they find a steady income and never find humility. I could tell you the numbers to the last cent, because for the first 3 years after June died, spreadsheets were one of the only things that kept me quietly intact. $42,000 toward Lydia's down payment. $18,000 to Jeremy after he changed jobs and there was a gap between first checks. $7,300 to Brad when his startup just needed another little swing to get to runway. $4,800 to Monica so the kids could keep their preschool spot. A dozen smaller transfers to fill holes that always appeared in their budgets where my love would fit. They repaid me with "It will be easier if you just hand me your wallet, Dad, and we will make sure nothing falls through the cracks." They repaid me with jokes about my flip phone era. They repaid me with the phrase "bank poor guy," which I first saw in a text thread that popped up on the kitchen tablet Lydia had logged into in my house and forgotten to log out of. The group chat had a title. Damage Control. "Do not say that," Lydia wrote after someone called me bank poor guy. "Just tell him you need grocery money because the kids have allergies. He will not ask twice. He will not ask twice." It hummed around my heart for days like a generator you cannot quite locate. It is important for you to know something, though. The thing they never asked twice about was how I spent the years that did not show. 40 years ago, when my friend Ray and I were young enough to lift whatever the day put in front of us, I started putting a little money into clean companies with ugly names. Funds that bought shares of metal and semiconductors and irrigation. Nothing romantic. Just workhorses. I told nobody because I did not have anybody who understood why there is pleasure in watching a line inch up over years like a vine on a wall. By the time I was 50, it was a portfolio that paid me in dividends every quarter, and those dividends bought more shares, and the machine hummed. By the time I was 60, it could have covered my children's lives twice over and left them bored in comfort. I told myself I would hand it to them when they learned how to hold a thing without crushing it. After that dinner when Brad laughed and asked me how it felt to be a man who did nothing with his days, I did not shout or point. I put my fork down. I stood. I took my coat from the back of my chair. How does it feel? I said, but not to answer him. I asked myself. The words tasted like metal. I looked around that dining room at the chandelier I had paid for and the rug I had chosen because the saleswoman smiled like June. I looked at my granddaughter Emma sitting up very straight, trying to be perfect at surviving a storm. It feels like the part where a man stops being a resource and starts being a person again. Monica rolled her eyes. Points to me, her face said without a word. Lydia said, "Please do not be dramatic," but her voice wavered. "I am not being dramatic," I said. "I am being specific. I will no longer cover your bills. Consider me unreliable." Brad laughed. He had the kind of laugh that sounded like it was throwing something. "I think the word is ungrateful," he said. "Ungrateful to the people who take care of you. Believe me, Mark." "It is Arthur," I said. "If you were not family, I would charge you for my time." "You already do," I said, and then I walked out the door and listened to the sound of my own breath for a while in the night. It was a good sound. It meant I had not drowned. The next morning I made coffee at the kitchen window with both hands, both because my hands are clumsy at dawn and because I wanted to feel the weight of the cup. I have learned that important mornings are better when you recognize them while they are still small. I looked at a paper calendar where I had written 3 words in the square that held the day. Do not rescue anyone. There is a small beach near my house that is not impressive unless you like the small work of water. The tide is too lazy to roar and too stubborn to vanish. I walked to it in my fisherman's jacket with pockets full of old receipts and one lucky washer I found when I moved June's workbench after the funeral. I looked for answer shapes in the foam. I am not a man who looks for meaning in clouds or birds, but grief makes a superstition of everyone. I had a foolish urge to ask the ocean to tell me what to do with my money and my anger. Then I laughed out loud at myself, because I am 60, not 16. I laughed in a way that emptied my lungs so completely I had to sit down and let my blood catch up to me. That is where she found me. That laugh must have sounded like a beacon. You are not the first person to ask the Pacific to choose a side, she said, the kind of voice that lets you turn your head without bracing for disappointment. She had a woven bag on her shoulder and a library book in one hand. Silver hair, not the skittish, loud kind that says notice me, but the kind that has stopped apologizing for the years it has lived. She stood the way gardeners stand when they are about to decide where to dig. Did it answer you? She asked. With gulls, I said. So I assume the answer is no. That is the most honest answer I have heard all week, she said. She smiled but did not perform the smile. I am Ruth. Arthur, I said. And since I am apparently in a season of saying true things, I will tell you that I came down here to avoid calling a lawyer and writing down which people I love get which pile of money. People you love, she repeated quietly, as if testing the temperature of the phrase. That is a short list in some families and an expensive one in others. We walked. She kept a respectful half-step to my left like she was letting me decide whether I wanted company. The tide pushed 1,000 wet glints at our shoes. My husband left me 33 years ago, she said, not abruptly but like a plank laid between two places. A Tuesday around lunch. He took our car and exactly 6 shirts and declared that men who stay are men who die. I had a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old who needed shoes, so I worked 3 jobs in a neighbor's garden to keep us in light. My son is named Thomas. My daughter is named Eva. Their father is named Regret. I am not sentimental when it comes to leaving. She raised them without him, I heard the ocean say, because the ocean loves to pretend it wrote the story when all it did was listen for long enough. We talked about the logic of paying bills and the half-crazy arithmetic of widowhood. We told each other our favorite small humiliations because the big ones are too heavy to hand over at the beginning. She likes to do crosswords with a pen. I like to finish a cup of coffee without moving the spoon. She turns the hangers in her closet after she wears something so time tells her when to let go. I keep every manual in a file box because paper is how I acknowledge I am still responsible for the things I brought into my house. This part is trivial, but it is religious to me, she said, and I liked that word in her mouth, religious, as a way of admitting respect. I caught myself thinking about what her hands would look like on a cup of coffee in my kitchen. I scolded myself for moving that thought forward. I am a man who prefers to let a second sentence earn its right to follow the first. We met at the beach for 3 mornings in a row. We talked while gulls watched us like nosy neighbors. I did not tell my children I was waking early. I did not tell the ocean either, because I did not want to make it responsible for anything. On the 4th morning, she brought me a bag of citrus from her yard, heavy with the kind of scent that makes your head think it is remembering something when it is just making a new memory. On the 5th morning, I brought her a thermos of decent coffee and confessed that I was a grandfather who had been called unreliable and poor by his own family. Which one of those 2 words cut you more? She asked gently. Poor, I said. Unreliable is just code for a man who has stopped saying yes. Poor is a story about my worth they wanted to hear themselves tell. And what is the truth? The truth is I have more than they think and less than they want. Her eyes were steady. The truth is you have enough to choose your own ending. The messages from my children started as crumbs and became a trail I refused to follow. Missed calls. A picture of my grandson with a caption that said, "Call Grandpa Duty." An article link from Monica with the title "Estate Planning is a Family Affair." A voicemail from Brad that began with the phrase, "We need to talk about your house." When they did not get what they wanted, the tone changed. Unreadable emoji. Messages with no greeting. Dad, we have been trying to reach you. Dad, it is Lydia. This is serious. Dad, are you ignoring us on purpose? The word purpose had a mean weight at the end of it, the way people say it when they do not like that someone else discovered one. I did not reply for a week. I fed the tomatoes. I walked the strip of beach that pretends the world is simple. I cooked the kind of meals June liked to call rescue dinners, things you can make from whatever survived your last grocery trip. I told Ruth about the secret account and watched her face carefully for the look I had learned to expect, calculation dressed as concern. It did not appear. Instead, she asked me what those companies did, the ones I invested in, and I told her about irrigation systems in places that take water like a blessing and about arteries of rail that feed warehouses with midnight. She listened like a person at a window. "Do your children know?" she asked. "No," I said. "They know how to read my bank account because I showed them once when I was tired and they never forgot. They do not know how to read the years." "Then tell them you have nothing to give." "I already did," I said. The beach kept rolling the same small wave at my shoes as if it believed in practice. "I want you to meet them." "Are you sure?" she said. "People who are used to taking will look for purchase in whoever you bring near." "I am sure," I said, and I surprised myself by meaning it. We picked a neutral place with clean bathrooms and a safe exit. A cafe with a chalkboard menu and a back door that becomes a straight line to the street. I paid the cashier and waited with my tray like a man in a courtroom. When Lydia walked in, she gave the room a quick assessment and put a smile on that showed all her teeth. When Jeremy walked in, he looked at his watch and shook his head before he kissed my cheek. "Dad," Lydia said, voice already threaded with something scolding. "You have been hard to reach." "This is Ruth," I said, before she could set the tone. "She reads books faster than I read anything, and she grows citrus in her yard, and she has known me for 15 mornings. 15, Ruth murmured politely to me, as if correcting the record for our children was an act of respect. "So," Jeremy said too loudly. "Dad has a girlfriend." "Partner," Ruth said, and I did not smile, but something in my chest did. "I am not a girl and I do not intend to flirt with his life." Monica arrived late, breathless, carrying a shopping bag. She looked at Ruth as if Ruth were an invoice. Brad arrived on time with a leather portfolio under his arm, the kind of prop men bring to meetings when they want to remind everyone who has the paper. "Can we talk about the house?" Brad asked, sitting. "And the boat?" "It is rusting in the driveway. There is a responsible way to wrap these things up." "Wrap these things up," I repeated. "It is a life, Brad, not a holiday present." "Arthur," Monica said brightly. "You always respond emotionally when we are trying to problem solve. You do not have the bandwidth for the details anymore, and that is all right. We are here to help. We just need the right permissions." "The word you are looking for is power," Ruth said. "You want his powers of attorney. You want his signatures. You want to be him on paper." Monica laughed in a way that told me she thought she could make Ruth smaller. "We want to make sure Arthur is protected." "From what?" Ruth asked. "From himself," Lydia said quietly, not looking at me. There it was. There was the thesis. "My husband used to talk that way," Ruth said, and her voice was not loud, but it made the whole table lean in. "He called it love when he took what he wanted. We were rescued when he left. It is really best practice to simplify everything," Brad went on, gesturing to his portfolio. He touched the paper like a talisman. "Trusts. Sales. Consolidation. If you want to keep the boat, fine. Keep the boat. But the lake place has to go. And we need a clear understanding of where the rest of your assets are." "Brad," I said. "Tell me a story about when you were kind to someone who could not give you anything." He blinked. "What does that have to do with?" "Everything," I said. "It has to do with everything." "Tell me one." He thought for a long moment and then smiled as if he had found a good answer. "I let my assistant take an extra day after her appendix surgery. She said she would make it up to me and I told her not to worry about it." "A day," Ruth said, very softly, as if she were identifying something under glass. "You gave someone a day of her own suffering." Monica gathered her bag. "All right. This is clearly not productive." She turned to me. "Dad, we are not taking no for an answer. We will send the papers and you can sign when you are in a calmer state." "I have never been calmer," I said. "We will see you in court if we have to," Brad added. The way he said court told me he liked the word the way some men like their own names. Ruth looked at me. She did not tell me what to do. She did not put a hand on my arm in a way that would make this look like choosing sides. She just stood, nodded respectfully to my children, and stepped back to let me be the only person in my body. "Do not call me for money again," I said to my children, and it felt like pouring the last glass from a bottle you had not realized was almost empty. "Do not call me because your daycare is behind or your gutters are clogged or your contractor disappeared with your deposit. If you want to call to tell me a story about your day, call. If you want to bring me my grandchildren and let me make them sandwiches and tell them about wind, bring them. If you want to call me bank poor guy again in your messages, do it. But do not dial my number with your palm up. That is over." The silence that followed was not absolute. I could hear cups being set down at other tables. I could hear a car horn soft and far. I could hear the small sound Ruth makes when she is about to step in front of something for someone she loves but chooses not to. "We are done here," Lydia said, and her face did a thing I had seen it do when she was 11 and lost a spelling bee. It tried anger because sadness can feel too much like falling. "We were done the first time you laughed at me," I said very quietly. "It was not unkind. I am not interested in being cruel. Cruelty has so short a shelf life." They left. Brad took his portfolio like a child taking a toy home. Monica called back over her shoulder, "We will talk soon about getting you the help you need," and I replied, "I already have it," and watched her pretend she did not hear. Ruth and I did not speak for a full minute. Then she said, "You did the brave thing." "I did the tired thing," I said. "Those are often the same." That afternoon I called a lawyer who still uses a fountain pen. It is an old-fashioned habit, but it makes him slow down, and I wanted slow. We created a living trust with a name that made me laugh when I signed it because I wanted one thing in this world to be for me. We moved accounts that nobody but me had known, things that hummed in the back of long years like a generator, into a vehicle that protected them from anyone who thought feelings counted as ownership. I made 4 specific bequests. A fund for Emma's schooling, locked so tight it would not budge if someone put a pry bar under it. A gift to my church with a note that asked them to use it for the quiet work nobody takes pictures of. A lump for my neighbor, Willis, who has been mowing my lawn since my back screamed at me after the funeral and would not ever take money from me for it. And a piece to my friend Ray's widow, who chooses between groceries and medicine each month like the world is guessing at her endurance. The rest went to the trust beneficiaries, Thomas and Eva, Ruth's children. I asked to meet them only after I had made my choice. I did not want to interview them like a banker. I wanted to see who they already were. Thomas is a teacher who owns 2 suits and wears both of them to shake hands with the parents at his school's open house. He brings store-brand cookies because it is not about the cookies. He shook my hand with both of his. He said, "Your wife's name was June," and I half fell in love with the boy for saying was in a voice that smoothed the word. Eva runs a small kitchen that feeds people who do not have many choices. She stood with her arms crossed while I explained that I was not there to be an answer but maybe to be a sentence that helps one appear. She did not thank me the way people thank someone who gives them something they intend to waste. She thanked me like a woman who keeps lists on her refrigerator and knows which list can get shorter with kindness. I did not tell them anything about the trust. You do not show people the scaffolding if you want to see how they stand. 2 weeks later I woke to 14 missed calls. 3 from Lydia. 5 from Jeremy. The rest from numbers I did not know. 1 was Brad. He left a message in a voice that made me think of a child who has lost his toy and is mad at gravity. "Arthur," he said. "We are concerned. We need to understand where you are and who you are with. It is irresponsible to disappear like this. I was sitting at my kitchen table with Ruth, planning a small wedding with too much good bread. We had decided on the beach because we met where the water pretends to do what you tell it. We were choosing between the word ceremony and the word promise. Ruth looked up from the notepad. Tell me what the message says without telling me his words. He thinks I belong to him, I said. She considered that. Then do not give him the satisfaction of arguing. I did not call back. I am an old man in some ways but an excellent student in others. You can teach a man like me to enjoy a quiet phone. The next week was when Monica started the Innocent campaign. It is a thing I have noticed that people do when they want to be forgiven without admitting anything. She sent pictures of the children in matching sweaters. She sent a link to an article about dopamine and grandchildren. She sent a picture of the rug in their living room and wrote, "We are thinking of replacing this." Thoughts? I sent, "That rug has served its time. Buy one your children can spill on." She texted, "We will discuss Thanksgiving." I replied, "I will be at the beach." On the morning of the wedding, the wind tried to push us back up the stairs in the kind of playful way that makes old women smile and teenage boys swear. My friend with the fountain pen came and watched me sign things as if we were at the theater. Ruth wore a dress the color of light. I wore the jacket that has lived with me through 3 winters and the worst week of the best year of my life. Halfway through the vows, I saw a cluster of familiar faces at the top of the steps. Lydia. Jeremy. Their spouses. Their anger had dressed itself in concern for the journey. "Dad," Lydia called, half-whisper. "Please. Just please." "Please what?" I asked. I did not shout. I did not move toward them. I stood and let the wind carry my words up the stairs. "Please come sign away your life in a meeting room. Please apologize for not funding the people who keep stepping on you. Please stop loving someone because she did not spend the last 30 years using your name to open your wallet." "You do not know her," Monica said. "She is using you." "Then she is using me to be less alone," I said. "Believe me, it is not the worst use I have suffered." Brad took a step down and then stopped when he saw the man beside me with the pen. He knows what those leather folders mean. He knows the weight of paper that changes the weather. He pointed, theatrically outraged, as if he had a right to the contents. "You cannot do this." "I already did," I said. That was when the sound came out of him. I have only heard it once before, in a dog who wanted a bone he could not reach and could not understand why possession had changed hands. It is not a sound that adds dignity to a life. Ruth took my hand. She almost never does that in front of other people. It was an act of protection. It was also a marker. I felt my body lean toward her the way a tree leans toward light it can use. "Emma." I called up to the steps. My granddaughter's face appeared from behind Lydia's jacket like the moon from behind a cloud. "If you want to come down and throw a handful of shells at my feet after I say I do, I would like that." I saw Lydia waver. "We are leaving," Jeremy shouted, and then he did not leave. It is a strange talent, to announce exit and then remain. I turned back to Ruth. "I do. I do," she said, with the same softness she uses when she says my name in my kitchen when nobody else is listening. We signed. The pen made its blue sound. The lawyer reminded me that signatures are just a formality when the heart has already chosen a position. He may have said it to me, but he looked at my children as if he knew who needed to hear that you cannot retroactively become kind and call it inheritance. After the vows, we walked a little way down the beach while the people who loved us badly complained at the top of the stairs. The people who loved us well ate bread and talked in a circle that made space and then made more space when a gull decided to stand in the exact middle of it like a critic. That afternoon, Thomas and Eva came to the house with mason jars of flowers and an extra bag of ice because they had learned to anticipate the small needs that make a gathering comfortable for other people. Thomas fixed the hinge on the screen door without being asked. Eva made sure the knife that cuts tomatoes stayed where the tomatoes were being cut. Their kindness is not the kind that tweets itself. It is the kind that picks up a dropped fork with emotion that does not draw attention. I sat them both down at my kitchen table when the plates had been rinsed and said, "I have done something that will make your lives easier if you let it." They grew still. I told them about the trust and about the dividends that do not stop because the world is bored. I told them about the rules I had written into the trust that kept it from turning into a party. I told them there was a peace for their mother that would cushion the years without turning them into a thing without weight. Eva cried once, one quick salt line down one cheek. She tried to wipe it away like a person embarrassed to do something as human as weeping in front of people she barely knows. Thomas put a hand on the table and did not reach for mine, because some respect is a space you keep. "We did not ask," he said. "We came without asking." "I know," I said. "That is why this is yours." That night, after everybody left, I stood alone in the kitchen for a long time. June's apron still hangs on a hook near the pantry. I like to pretend it is because she might walk in, but the truth is simpler. I keep it there because it reminds me that love leaves marks on a house that look like use. My phone buzzed on the counter. I thought about leaving it until morning. I answered. It was Lydia. Her voice had become a place with no chairs. "I saw what you did today." "You saw me get married," I said. "You know what I mean." "Do you?" I asked. She did not reply. I could hear Monica prompting her in the background. You can always hear the person in the background if you really listen. They are the ones who think they are not responsible for the script they wrote. "Emma wants to see you," Lydia said. "Then bring her," I said. "Bring her and let her put her toes in the water and I will teach her to skip the flat stones. And we will not talk about money." "Everything is about money," she said, very bitterly, in the voice of someone who learned that line at a table where gratitude was a word people dusted off for holidays. "Everything is about how you carry what you have," I said, and then I told her I loved her and hung up before she could turn that word into a tool. The next week, Ruth and I went for a walk at the beach and I laughed again at the water because I had once asked it for an answer and it gave me a companion who knew how to make a bed with hospital corners and how to change a man's mind by letting him keep it. That is the best kind of change. She told me about the years after her husband left. She told me about selling wedding china one piece at a time because the set was worthless but the single dishes fed children. She told me about the day Eva stood on a chair to reach the sink and announced she could do her own dishes now, and how Ruth had let her because dignity is a job you hire your own children for. I told her about when June got so small at the end and said, "Take care of them," and how I thought I was doing that when I wrote the checks but what I was really doing was erasing the part where they had to grow their own strength. "Forgiveness is not a form of amnesia," Ruth said. "It is a way to stop paying interest on someone else's debt." We made a set of rules for our house that we wrote down on the inside of the pantry door with a pencil because pens feel too eager to be official. The rules are ordinary. Eat the fruit. Tell the truth. Touch kindly. Let the door close softly. Invite the neighbor when you bake too much. It is a remarkable list if you were raised by people who thought rules were about control and not about light. There is one other thing that belongs to this story. It is small but it makes a large sound. A month after the wedding, I received a letter with no return address. Inside was a printed-out screenshot of a text from Brad to Monica. The name at the top of the screenshot was a number I did not recognize. Let him sweat, Brad had written. Once he realizes he has nobody left, he will come crawling back. Men like him always do. We will get our signatures. Below that, written in a neat handwriting that reminded me of my middle school teacher when she wanted to save me from my own stubbornness, were the words, "I cannot watch this and do nothing. Your granddaughter deserves better examples." A tiny thing. A fracture in the performance. I do not know if it was the assistant who got the extra day after her appendix or the neighbor or the woman who runs the daycare. It does not matter. Someone decided a secret could be used for light. My heart learned something new that day about the world. On Sundays, Thomas comes by with his lesson plans and eats fried eggs at my table while Ruth reads me paragraphs she underlined that week. On Tuesdays, Eva brings me a tub of something her kitchen made in a batch too large for the orders. On Thursdays, I sit on the damp log at the beach and wait to hear the first gull, and sometimes I hear a voice that sounds exactly like the woman I married at 21 and the woman I married at 60 saying the same thing, which is this: choose the people who come toward the light when it is time to stand. My children still call. Sometimes Lydia comes with Emma, and we put our hands out for the wind and see if it can push against our palms hard enough to make us step back. Sometimes Jeremy calls and complains about his boss, and when he forgets himself we have a good conversation about work that does not try to own you. I do not rescue them. I do not punish them. I live the lesson. It is a hard lesson to learn late, but most of the good ones are. If you must have a symbol, here is mine. It is not a hammer in the hand. It is a hammer laid on a table where all can see that it exists. I did not swing it. I just set it down, and everyone understood what could happen if they kept using the old names for me. The day we took our first vacation together, Ruth and I stood at the railing of a small ferry with paint scraped off at shoulder height where people like to grip. I held her hand. She held my wrist because my hands shake sometimes when I am excited. In the distance, the shore stacked up on itself like a promise. You should check the portfolio, she teased, which is what she says when she wants me to feed the part of myself that finds relief in the language of numbers. I will, I said, after we have the bread, which is what I say when I want to remind both of us that the only numbers that matter today are the number of people at this table and the number of minutes we can sit here before the ferry asks us to move. At 60, against all sensible advice, I fell in love again. Not just with a woman. With a way of choosing. With the clean idea that your money can be a mirror or a hammer and the only person who decides which is you. I remade my life at a kitchen table. I watched the tide work the same stones every day and finally learned what it was trying to teach me: everything is shaped by what it refuses to carry. I left the stocks to Thomas and Eva because they know the cost of a thing. I left the house to a trust that does not care about a man's temper if the locks are changed. I left my old family a door that is open if they want to walk through without their hands out. I left my granddaughter a stack of flat stones and a note that says, "Trust the ones who bring you water, not the ones who make you thirsty." And I left the ocean my laughter, which it can spend however it likes.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.